Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? This is Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have an exceptional woman with me. She is a talented writer. She's a humanitarian. She's just really cool. Her name is Mindy Dougherty, and I am so excited to share her story with you today. Welcome, Mindy.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, let's just jump right into it. So tell me, what made you join the military?
So I actually wanted to join the military to get the best trauma training. I wanted to be in the medical field. And during that last year of our high school and the year prior, war had been going on. And so I figured what better training would that be to go in and at least get the training that would be proposed if I ever did get to go to war. And then also wanted to eventually become a doctor, which I'll tell you at this point in time, those dreams got dashed. But during the time that I wanted to go in, it was all medical. You know, I've been watching brain surgery since I was 3. And so anything medical had kind of just interest and piqued my mind. And at one point I thought we could go to become an officer because went in enlisted and wanted to become an officer and do like a green to gold program at some point to possibly go to PA school or nursing school.
Wow. So you had big dreams that led you to the military.
Yes.
You were Army, right?
I was in the United States Army for 4 years, 1995 to 1999.
Wow. That's when I was serving, actually.
Nice.
So, but, I'm Navy. So tell me, what was boot camp like for you?
So boot camp was definitely interesting and more or less, I wouldn't say easy, but for the most part, I got in trouble mostly for my mouth and not for the physical endurance, mostly because I would joke around, I would want to have fun, and I was 18 years old, so I didn't really take anything seriously. So I always got in trouble for either smiling, laughing, or making jokes.
Totally worth it. I'm sure everybody around you were so glad that you were making those jokes, because anything to make boot camp a little bit easier, so worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I still have my friends today that we were in boot camp together. And that's the one thing that her and I laugh about still today is all the jokes that we made getting through boot camp and getting in trouble together for making jokes about what we were doing. Roll left, roll right, getting in the dirt, squats, stuff like that. So I kind of always made comedy my little routine as I got older and would make jokes out of things to simplify things as well.
Yeah, well, everybody loves the class clown, right? So my kid is that. He loves it. He cannot get enough of making people laugh. So I totally feel that. And in boot camp, for sure, I can remember laughing so hard sometimes in boot camp when we weren't supposed to and getting into trouble. So those are some of my favorite boot camp memories too, actually. And you said you have a friend that you kept in touch with this entire time, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, I've had a few friends that actually were stationed with me from 95 to 99. Mm-hmm. Both the basic training I've kept in contact with when I was stationed in Germany and stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado, that have been with me throughout the years.
That's amazing. I really wish that I was in contact with some of my boot camp sisters. That would be amazing, but we didn't keep in touch. And, in the 90s, it was hard too. I'm amazed. How did you guys manage to keep in touch? And there's no cell phones, internet was new. Like, how did you maintain those friendships?
So I used to get people's addresses and phone numbers, and I sent literally over 15 photographs and postcards throughout the years. And then when Facebook came around, I'd look up several people from my unit and, obviously some with us and some found me as well. And now that I've become public and I wrote a book, they've looked at my book and read some of the stories that had to deal with HHT-26 Cav, which I was in, and Medac unit, which was Fort Carson. HHT-26 Cav was Illesheim, Germany. And they looked me up and read my book and they were like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Because they wanted to know what I would say about our unit. And there were certain people that had been coming out that have literally said they had the same issues with this person, or they thought this person was great. And I kind of really valued the information that I had gotten after I wrote my book, and definitely found a peace through that and an internal justice through it.
That's amazing. I want to talk about your book, but I'm going to wait.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll talk about it at the end a little bit more because I want to share that with everybody. I think it's amazing. And I want to hear more about your story that I bet some of these stories are in the book too. So my next question for you was, after boot camp, what was your training like, your AIT?
So my AIT, I went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. At the time, we were called 91 Bravos, which they've changed a couple different times into, I think, 91 Whiskey, 91 Charlie, into different subcategories. And what I was called at the time was a combat field medic. So we kind of learned EMT training during that specific time. And now they've changed it, from my understanding, to become paramedic or even LPN, which is a nurse, licensed practitioner nurse, before you become an RN. So everything's kind of changed, evolved. Of course, this was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So right after AIT, I went into Germany, and then we were deployed to Bosnia and Croatia, and we went to Hungary, Tazar, Hungary, and Tuzla West. That was in Bosnia.
Wow. What was that experience like for you?
So that's where I unfortunately contracted a parasite, which I ended up getting appendicitis and pancreatitis at the same time, and was flown back. I was air evac'd back to Germany, into what they call Krankenhaus in Illesheim, close to Bad Windsheim, Germany. And a friend of mine had to basically pick me up off the floor and brought me to the hospital. And they had said 5 minutes later, and I would have been dead, because the parasite had literally made my appendix and pancreas so bad that either my appendix was about to rupture or something had happened to where my liver enzymes went up, and I had to be flown back to the United States for further treatment because my pancreas was completely flared. And after making the necessary procedures, I had over 100 procedures to try to make it stop within the 4 years that I was in the military. But it never stopped. It would go down for a little bit, and then it would increase the inflammation again. So I had pancreatitis for a total of 8 years. But during the military time, I would do my job, get sick, and then end up having to go back to the doctor a few times until they tried taking my gallbladder out. I've had my appendix taken out. And then after the military, I've had more surgeries from that. But basically, when I was in the first couple of years, I was in, Germany, and then flown back to the United States, and flown back. And then I was stationed at Medac, which was Fort Carson, for the last 2 years, from 97 to 99, where I actually took over and represented 5,137 soldiers, and would basically try to do anything I could to make the living standards better for the soldiers, and anything that would make living standards. It was called Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. So I was appointed, elected, and then reelected by my peers to make things better for the base. And the changes, actually, I got to see 10 years later, that had taken over, and our barracks had completely changed. They had gotten beds that were proper for soldiers. They actually got individual rooms. When I was there, we had just pay phones for everybody on one floor, so people would miss the opportunity to talk to their family, which is so important. So at one point, I'd called up the president of Sprint, and I said, hey, is there any way we can get a contract with you to put in phone lines in each person's room so that they can have the free will to talk to their parents, talk to their friends, and have better opportunity for communication? And so we got a lot of things changed. Me and my team got a lot of things changed at Fort Carson. And then I ended up getting sent to Washington, D.C. to get memorandums changed, and things actually changed for our base and then for other bases that would continue forward. And the momentum, actually, I found out 9 years ago that it had taken full force into actually changing a lot of the barracks and how they were run.
Wow, that's actually really incredible.
Yeah, I was very happy for that.
I can imagine you must be so proud. That's a huge deal. I mean, I know that everyone who has served has had a barracks experience, and some are better than others. Like I was just thinking about all of this, and I know we served during the same time period, and I was stationed in Great Lakes, Illinois. And
Okay.
so I was thinking about my experience in the barracks, right? And I was thinking, we all had phone lines. I had a roommate, but it was more like a dorm than it was like anything else, right? We had decent beds. So it's hard for me to imagine these changes that you had to get put in place. But thinking about it, like, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah,
We,
there was like 6 or 7 people in a room at one point, and then World War
wow.
II barracks where they were all metal and a tiny little, like, might as well say pillow for a bed. So we got
But,
that changed, and then
wow.
people got individual rooms after I left. Of course, it wasn't
All
wild.
right. You didn't get to
You know,
enjoy the
the
fruits of your
buildings were,
labor.
yeah, the buildings were slowly constructed, but at least the changes got made. And, they always say that you never know the effect or the ripple effect that you'll have upon people. And
Mm-hmm.
never in my wildest dreams did I think that being there from May 97 to April 99, that those changes would actually take into effect and actually help people throughout the United States.
That's so incredible. I had to tell you, I remember going from boot camp to A school, is what we called it in the Navy. They called our barracks the hotel because it had just been built. It was brand new
Oh, wow.
and it was so nice. Like the Corps School barracks was actually better than our staff barracks when I went from Corps School to staff because I stayed in Great Lakes. But it still wasn't like, I mean, granted, they were old, but we still had, decent beds. We had like an armoire. We had,
Oh,
we had
wow.
phone lines in our room. I remember I put a phone in there so I could call my mom. Like, I can't imagine having to wait. It's so important to have that communication with home and with loved ones. I can't imagine, like, as staff, like, while serving, that you have to go to these payphones and you miss
Well, the
calls
lines were
or,
so long, and I
yeah.
found that soldiers were getting depressed. And
Oh,
the
see?
biggest thing that I wanted to do was combat suicidal ideation at that point,
Mm,
anxiety and depression, because when people can't talk to their family members, both
yes.
sides get unnerved. And,
Mm-hmm.
learning about like getting deployed and having these people having like 5 and 6 and 7 deployments and then coming back and not being able to talk to their family just became unacceptable to me.
Yeah, that is absolutely unacceptable. Wow. It's incredible what you did, though, and all the changes that you were able to get made for everyone coming behind you.
Thank you. I don't think I realized the effect, honestly, until about 10 or 15 years later. Because when you're in it, you just sometimes you don't know. You're in the experience yourself. And so being able to go back to the base 10 years later, we have what's called WCAP in Fort Carson, Colorado, where it's the athletes who train for the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to see the boxing coach and the wrestling coach that were still there. And when I walked in, and of course, we knew each other right away, familiar faces. And I was like, well, dang, you're getting old. So,
Yeah, aren't we all?
right? So now I'm like 44, looking back, going, oh, I guess I wasn't that much older. But yeah, it just really amazes me how many changes were actually made. And the special forces billets and home base, they always had the best anyways, but they got
Mm-hmm.
improvements on their side too.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I actually want to go back a little bit because I
Sure.
have a question. You said when you were in Bosnia that you contracted a parasite. How did that happen?
Yeah, very interesting question. So the way that the military structures things, which I don't know why they do this, but whenever you're out overseas, they seem to hire people that are in that country to cook our food. And so somehow I don't think that the sanitation and standards that we have in America
Mm-hmm.
were up to par. And so the hygiene possibly and everything else that we had, when I arrived, we took showers outside. And at one point we were going to the bathroom outside. So we had field sanitations set up, and I would actually train the soldiers on how to clean up yourself, what to do before eating, what to do when you're in the field, because we would do training sites for over 30 days. So baby wipes was my MO, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to do the best you can with chlor tabs, getting the water, clean as we can, and teaching other soldiers what to do in case you're basically stuck in an area where you have to basically survive.
Wow. I mean, that's real. That's very real. And so you,
Camping on crack, basically.
yeah, yeah,
A
right.
whole different level.
That is the actual antithesis of glamping.
Right.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
so
no
far another
makeup,
direction.
none of that. I never even really the soldiers that are nowadays. They have this makeup and all this other stuff, and I'm thinking there was none of this like stress cards that they talk about now. And
Right, I feel you.
stress cards, what's a stress
I know
card?
you can raise your hand.
Does
I
that mean you get
mean,
to raise up a little color and say I'm stressed out? You can't help me anymore. It's like we never had that. We were still getting
yeah.
hit at the certain times. I got knocked upside the head a couple times by my
What?
sergeant. Oh yeah. So
Really?
and that's why people, when they react like that, I'm like, oh, you guys didn't have that experience. They're like, no. I'm like, oh,
Girl,
okay,
I don't
well.
even know what I would have done if my like CC hit me. Like,
I've been hit upside the head a couple times.
wow. I mean, probably I would have took it because it's boot camp. But like, but I don't know. Like, it's
Don't
so
know what else to do.
unfathomable.
You're pretty much getting in trouble all the time. And unfortunately for me, I'll be very honest with you, I had such a troubled childhood that my older brother was always beating me, and
Yeah.
I had been sexually assaulted and gang raped at 10 by his
honey.
best friends. So
That's
coming away
horrible.
from that situation, being hit by like a drill sergeant and being hit by my NCOs, I guess it just didn't, like, not that it didn't matter, but it was just kind of my like routine. Like I just thought, oh, this is a normal thing. I messed up, I get hit. I went
Wow.
left instead of right, I get hit. I took my soldiers into an area that they weren't supposed to be in, I got hit. And I just at that point thought I deserved it. Not deserved it, but I just thought that, well, I messed up and this is the consequence.
This is what happens.
And it's
Wow.
not like you can completely fight back because
No.
they've been in combat so many times, they know what they're doing. And so it made me a stronger person. And by the time I got out, I guess I just didn't look at things as troublesome until I got out, and the VA was the one who really got me messed up, we'll talk about later. But in the military, I was so respected by my soldiers that at one point when I was getting in trouble, they all sort of came down and did push-ups with me, and the leadership got pissed. It was more or less like, why do you respect her instead of me? And I was like, oh, mercy. So I was getting in trouble to the nth degree because I was sticking up for them, basically going toe-to-toe with my leadership and wanting the things to change. And so my soldiers basically saw that I would take the hit for them. And that's when they started to come around and be like, this is so unacceptable. This is not okay,
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I find it shocking. I don't know how many other female veterans out there got hit by their leadership. Like, I'm still stuck on that.
Oh, really?
Like, we got beat, but like cycled.
Gets hit. So I'm like, what do you mean you didn't get hit?
That's so crazy to me. I'm like, we got like cycled and worked out. They would say, we're going to beat your ass, right? And right. So,
but not
so the verbal abuse was there, right? That was par for the course, of course. But they were like, we're going to beat your ass. And it would be like, we got cycled, we got worked out to like, we wanted to die. But there was no ever physical touching of any type of, and not in corps school, not as staff. That's shocking to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one who didn't have.
I'm not sure. Well, you were in the 90s too. So
I served 94 to 99 and then did my inactive reserve.
Right. And then you were Navy. So maybe
I was Navy.
I don't know if it's different for, I don't know.
Somebody tell me. I was interested to know if anybody listening was physically hit by your leadership, because maybe I just don't know what it's like in the Army, right? I just find it shocking. Or maybe they were getting hit on other bases and I just didn't know. I just was on a base that they didn't do that. I don't know.
Or unfortunately, people don't tell because it's the culture that we're in.
That's true too.
To shut your mouth, basically. There's consequences that happen when you open your mouth. So it was more or less like I shut my mouth and I just dealt with it. And I took it for the team. I literally took one for the team until my team was like, this is just not okay. Like, this is just not acceptable anymore.
You know what?
I was glad that they did that. Don't get me wrong, but I was constantly like stepping up to the plate going, all right, let's go.
Wow. I mean, you know what gives me goosebumps though is your team, you know,
Yeah,
your
my team
soldiers
really did have
stepping
my
up
back.
and being like, no, this is not acceptable.
Right. And it was at a time where like it had to get so far to the point that they just couldn't take it anymore. But at one point they did, they let it go for a little while, a little longer,
Well,
a
what do
little
you
longer.
do?
And then at one point they were all just looking at me like, are you going to do something? And I was like, what do you want me to do? And so then they gathered and they were just like
Which
approaching me.
base was this?
Well, this was during training and then also at different subsets of bases that when I was at
Wow.
Fort Carson, was my best base. But other ones,
Prior to that, yeah. Wow, that's a new one for me. And I hear a lot of stuff on this show. Okay, like I hear amazing stories of wonderful times, and I hear some real horror stories as well.
well,
But
it's
that's a new
unfortunate
one.
too that the military culture, even just being in the military, that there's so much sexual abuse that's going on, the rape
Oh, for
culture
sure.
that's
Oh
going
my
on,
God.
and the hidden agendas, and
Mm.
basically, like I can deal with sexual harassment all day. It's sad to say that
You
it
shouldn't
doesn't
have
bother
to,
me.
but you shouldn't have to, is the point.
Right. But being assaulted and physically, sexually assaulted, unfortunately, goes so undermined and gets shoved right underneath the carpet because of the culture. And I've had friends
Absolutely.
of mine that have spoken out to me and have said, I have another friend who wrote her book about it, about being raped on base. And then they basically told her that she was crazy and wouldn't even allow her to get her story out.
Oh my goodness. It just never gets easier for me. It's like it is so appalling. Every time I hear a story like that, it is so appalling that this is just so common. It's so common that it's just absolutely criminal that our United States military is an environment where this is acceptable.
I told her, I said, we were just speaking about this a month ago. I said, I almost wonder if they recruit prisoners to the military and just allow this behavior to go on and that it's acceptable. It's become acceptable. And they'll run you through these like sexual harassment videos that you have to watch,
I
but they're
remember
jokes.
them.
They'll make
Yeah.
you, yeah, exactly. They'll make you sign a little Scantron afterwards saying, we watched our little video and how did you feel about the video? And if you put anything besides what you're supposed to, they actually make you go back and change your answer.
Right. Right. And what is the point of that at all?
Right.
So I'm like you, where sexual harassment really, I wouldn't say sexual harassment because there's a lot of things that fall under the spectrum of that. There are some things like dirty jokes and things of that nature that I have a crude sense of humor. They didn't bother me, but it's personal. Another girl may have been made to feel really uncomfortable by that. But what I'm talking about is even going further with where like guys are saying things or inappropriate touching or anything like that that falls under sexual harassment before it becomes military sexual trauma or anything like that. I was very fortunate to not experience a lot of that, but I find it very unacceptable that we could sit here and be like, it's part of the culture.
Right. It's sad. And I'll say this, I was never raped during my military service. It was when I was in the VA hospital, which I speak about later.
Girl,
it was either one or four doctors. So, I mean, that's what took me out of my nursing career. It happened in 2014, but that's what took me out the most.
Oh my God. But it's just like an extension of the same mentality. Correct. In a way, right?
And
it's
the doctors get away with it all the time.
Culture.
The doctors, the nurses, the staff, they just get either written up or they actually just get sent to a new hospital so that nobody can see their records.
That is absolutely disgusting. I want to do a deeper dive into that story here in just a minute, but I want to go back to what you said about prisoners in the military. Now, and I could be remembering this wrong, honestly. So if somebody knows, they can obviously send me a message and let me know. But I thought I remembered hearing something about people going to court, like after they get in trouble. And there was a time period where the judge would offer them to go into the military.
That's absolutely true.
Right?
So that's why it's like you're hiring these people. So what did you expect? Did you really expect them just to have a come to Jesus moment and become an angel?
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not. They're convicted. They're supposed to go to jail.
Yeah, but here's your option: jail or military, and they choose military.
Of course,
And
because they get
then,
paid.
right, and while you work, and then you go home at night,
Right.
like you're free
Like you've done nothing wrong.
to an extent.
We've under the carpets, and
I
they
mean,
don't. The records don't even get, the records get expunged. So literally nobody knows. And they get benefits for being like truthful, which they weren't truthful. That's the one thing I want to make sure people understand. They were convicted. They were not being truthful and honest. They were convicted of their crimes and then set free for the women or men, because men get raped too, but it's very,
absolutely,
and I stick up for them as well. Cause I've had personal friends of mine who were raped in basic training. So I want to make sure that we are understanding that this is part of a culture that men unfortunately get raped as well. And my best friend was. So I want to make sure that I, throw that in there.
We know the statistic has been 1 in 100, and people will think that 1 out of 100 guys in the military gets raped. Well, that's reported. So men are more predisposed not to report than women because of the stigma. Of course.
What man wants to say,
right.
Oh, they're raped, they're made fun of. They're basically told that they should have manned up, that like, what's wrong with you? Are you gay? Just all sorts of things that come into play. And they're just like, no. And my best friend, fortunately, was none of that. He was raped by a woman that wanted children, and he was like adamantly about no, and she basically took it anyway. And it's kind of just the same for women.
Wow.
Basically that same culture, that same attitude. The problem becomes when we turn a blind eye and we act like it didn't happen.
Absolutely. And I can't even imagine, because when I think of men getting raped in the military, and I say 1 in 100, but when you think about how many men are in the military, that really adds up, right? Sure. Women only make up not even quite a quarter yet, right? So
I'm not sure what the actual average is. I thought we had more women coming into the military.
We do. We have more. But I think about 2 years ago, I think was the last time I looked at this statistic. It was almost a quarter, and I think it will be a quarter. Yeah. Oh, wow. Surprisingly.
There was over 1,000 men when I was out in the field and stuff like that. And it was just basically me. And
we're much smaller of a percentage of the military than there are men, right? So if you think about 1 in 100, that's actually quite a lot of men. And those that are the only ones that are reporting, the ones that stay silent, there's probably so many more. But when I think of that, I think of, a guy on a guy for some reason. I don't know if it's just me. I never thought about a female raping a guy.
Yep. Like I'm neither until I'd actually heard his story. And then I was like, oh my gosh, but then another one, of course, was a man on a man, and it totally demeaned him because he wasn't gay, and he had to go through his own thing. Mm-hmm. And then the problem is when they don't say anything or they don't get therapy, they internalize it, and then they use that either to hate women, or they become very sadistic and angry towards women. So then they end up bringing that into relationships, and so the theories behind, men don't get raped is horrible, so I stand up for both. However, I understand that unfortunately more women are assaulted than men, but I like to make sure that, I stick up for my best friend as well, who, had been assaulted.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the Female Veterans Podcast, but we love our veteran brothers. I mean, I was very blessed to have such a tight crew of guy friends. I always had more guy friends than girlfriends. Right. And when I was serving, I didn't have the experience that a lot of women have, where there were tons of women on my base, and my guy friends were like my best friends. We're still close to, that's where my people are that I kept in touch with. They are from my base at Great Lakes, and we still keep in touch. I've seen their families develop and grow and flourish, and it's been amazing. So I feel very lucky about that. So the Female Veterans Podcast is for women, but we love our brothers, our good brothers, right? And we shine a light on the ones that are doing the dirt and who we are being told while we're serving that their careers are more important than ours, that we're crazy because we want to report this, that and all of the things that we go through as women, good or bad, it's just our perspective is different. But we do appreciate and value our brothers here. And I've had even a couple of guys on my show, as a matter of fact. So I
Well,
love
it's
that you
great
said
that they
that.
actually will come out and lead at some point, you know. And like I
Mhm.
said, when I was in, it was my soldiers that were men. They were all men
Mm.
actually who stuck up for me at one point, and they were like, "This is just not okay. Like you doing this to her."
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I am so sad that you had to experience that. But I love the fact that your soldiers rallied. That's just a gorgeous moment.
It was
So
for me. It's one that I will never forget.
I can just imagine. So I want to ask you, you said that you had a lot of illness when you were in the military because of this parasite. Like, how did you first figure out that you were sick?
I was throwing up for 5 days straight, and they would basically put me on guard duty. My NCO didn't like me, and he didn't want to do any of the work. He was lazy. So he'd put me on 24-hour guard duty, and I got it extended, kept getting it extended. And at one point, one of the soldiers was like, "You look horrible. And if you don't go to the commander, I will." I'm like, "Well, he's the one who's putting me out here." And so at one point, I had to wait until the next day, and I went to the next base to get help, but they were like, "You can't do this," because basically you need orders to do anything. So I had to go back, finish out my guard duty for another day, and then go through sick call protocols. And then that's when I got air evac'd out because they were like, "You're too sick to be here." And I had lost so much weight, I looked like a ghost by the time I was there. So when I got sent out, at first they thought it was an ovarian cyst. So I had a 5 centimeter ovarian cyst taken out. And 3 weeks later, that wasn't the issue. It was my appendix. And so when they found out that I had appendicitis and pancreatitis at the same time at the German hospital, that's when I had actually gotten help. It was the military that was basically cutting it down, saying there's nothing wrong, everything is fine. And then when I went to the German hospital, they were like, "No, this is all wrong."
Wow. Imagine if you just went with that this is all fine. This
Well, I
is
would have been
okay.
dead. They had told my friend, because he's the one who picked me up, Sergeant Chris Bowers, and I owe my life to him basically. And I tried to keep in contact with him, but over the years, basically, I don't know if he's even still living at this point in time because of
Yeah.
deployments and stuff like that. But he had literally picked me up off the floor, brought me to the hospital, and they told him 5 minutes later I would have been dead.
Wow. You know, that's a powerful story, especially for me because I have a similar story. Not as bad, but so when I was in the military, I had a similar situation occur. My very first guest of the Female Veterans podcast is my lifelong friend, Melanie Hill, who served with me.
Nice.
She actually saved my life just the same way as he saved yours because I was also throwing up for 5 days straight.
Oh,
I mean, it
wow.
was like really coming out of both ends.
Right.
It started with a stomach ache, and I got misdiagnosed by this HM1 at one of the clinics that I worked at. And I went in, I said, I have a stomach ache. I just don't feel well. And he did an x-ray and he was like, "Oh, you're constipated." And he gave me something called mag citrate, which is
Oh,
a
geez, yeah.
laxative, right? So I didn't take it. I worked in the pharmacy and I was like, I don't want to take this. I don't feel good already. I don't want to take a laxative. So I kept getting sick. I kept vomiting for a couple of days and I was starting to get a pain in my back. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. I thought it was a muscle pain, but it just wouldn't go away. It was getting worse and I kept vomiting. So by like the third day of this, my friends were all saying, "You need to go in. You need to go to
Right.
sick call." And I was like, no, I'm going to make an appointment to see my doctor. And I had my doctor at my clinic. It was my favorite doctor. I made an appointment to see him, Dr. Isaacman, on Friday. And so I had that appointment set and I was like, no, I just got to make it to my appointment. Dr. Isaacman will give me the best care. Right. And I think it was Wednesday. I made it to Wednesday. So it had almost been a week of me throwing up and stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
That I said, or no, it was Tuesday that I said in the morning, I said, you know what? He must be right. I must be constipated. Something's wrong with me. I bet maybe I should take this laxative. It was such a mistake because then everything was just coming out of me. And then the third day of that was Wednesday. And my friend said to me, Melanie said, we were going to leave because one of my roommates, had two roommates at an apartment I had off base. One of my roommates wanted to have friends over. She wanted to entertain, have some like a date night or something like that. It was in our apartment, but all of our friends from the barracks would hang out at our apartment all the time. So we had a lot of fun parties there. So my friend was like, I'm going to have some of my friends over. We're going to hang out, a romantic night or whatever. And so we were like, we'll get out of here. So I was going to go to my boyfriend's apartment and my friend was going to come with me. We're just going to hang out, watch movies. But I was so sick. I was like death warmed over, right? And I
Yeah.
couldn't even make it from the apartment, which was on the first floor. It had like an outside door right outside. I couldn't even make it from outside to the car without throwing up.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm one of those people that I cannot stand to throw up in public. So then I like turn around and like go into the bathroom, and I was in there for like 10 more minutes. And when I came out, my friend had a backpack and she was like, I'm taking you to the emergency room right now. She's like, this is not cool. You cannot wait anymore. You're going in. She's like, I'll stay with you. When I got to the emergency room, by then I was in massive pain. I couldn't even think straight. I was like kind of going in and out of consciousness, right? And they were like really scared. So I didn't want to go to the ER. I don't know if this is at every base, but everybody who was at Great Lakes will remember that waiting for the ER was like a 4-hour thing. And I did not want to wait in the ER feeling miserable like that. I would have rather been on my couch, right? So we go in and I, of course, end up in the ER and I wait for like 2 hours before I get seen. And then when I finally get in there, which was actually fast, by the way. And when I finally got in there, they were like, oh my God, you have a kidney infection. And it's very bad. And you need to go to ICU. You actually have bacteria in your blood. You have blood sepsis. You might not make it. Like, we don't know. Like, we have to call your family. Like, we have to and off I went. And I was like legitimately in and out of consciousness. So I was like hearing this, and then the pain was so bad that my body was just shutting down.
Right.
And they took me to the ICU and I spent 3 days there. And then I'll never forget, because it was the weekend Princess Diana died. And then I was in and out of consciousness. And finally they told me, they're like, we think it's under control. We're going to be able to let you go to the ward. And so if my friend hadn't said to me, no, you're going, they told me, just like you were told, they said, if you would have waited one more day, the bacteria would have spread too far, and we would have just been able to make you comfortable until you passed away. And I was like, 22 years old. So I feel your story. I just want to share that with you to let you know that I'm here with you. Like, I feel this. I really feel this. So.
Well, and that's the other thing. For some reason, the medical community and the military and the VA, they always think you're lying to get out of stuff. It's like this culture of like, you're faking it, or you just don't want to be here. It's like, you only knew. I absolutely want to be here, and I'm not one to fake things basically upon my trying to get out. I was the one basically trying to stay in. So
yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because when I got up to the ward, a lot of rumors were spread about me as to why I was in there, right? And that was one of the things. Like I always say, I had an amazing time in the military until I didn't, and this was one of those things, one of two things that happened during my service that made me very acutely aware that not everybody has a good experience. In fact, people get damaged in there, and not just because it's hard, but because there's sometimes really shitty people that put on a uniform, and there's no way that they would have that respect if they didn't wear it on their arm, and they abuse it.
Right. Or if they get this rank and they all of a sudden think they have this God complex.
Well, that's it. They don't have the integrity and strength of character to earn that respect. Right. So the military, some people, I'm saying some people, is an easy way for them to have that respect, because all you have to do is rank up. Right. And then you get that respect regardless of the content of your character. Right.
Or they pass you over saying that, you're just doing this and the NCO is in charge. So if he's in charge, you got to do what he says when he says it.
So there's a lot of factors. A lot of factors. So I definitely feel that. I was sick a lot in the military too. I left the military with, everybody knows I'm a disabled vet. I left with Epstein-Barr virus. I left there. Wow. I reoccur with mono. I actually have mono right now. So it's been a struggle for me these last 8 weeks. I think I have like 4 more weeks to go until I'll start feeling better. But it's like, I know the routine because I've been having it. I haven't had it in 5 years, and I've been having it since my 20s. Right. But I was spent so much time on sick leave and sick call. And, there was a lot of things that happened. I got a lot of labels because of that. So I completely understand what you're talking about.
Right. It was unfortunate. Like I had to get out on a medical basically after my 4 years was done, but basically because I became what's called undeployable.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, because you have pancreatitis, if you get pancreatitis out of country, we wouldn't be able to help you. So you've now become medically unfit for duty and undeployable. So you have to make the choice. Do you want to get out now or do you want a medical? And I was like, well, you're not really giving me a choice. And so you can medical me out because I'm not going to choose to get out. You know, I want to serve more time. I wanted to reenlist and become an officer. So they put me through this program and treatment. And basically, I ended up getting medically taken out anyways after my 4 years basically of serving anyway. But I believe I did as best as I could throughout my time because I didn't really get as sick during my military stay. It was more or less like once my pancreatitis kept flaring up, they said, all right, now you're done. And
Yeah.
so when I got out, I had gone to the VA for help, and they would basically say, even though that my enzymes were in like the hundreds of thousands, which is not normal for pancreas,
Mm-hmm.
they would just say, you're just here to get medication and you just want pain pills. And it's like,
Hmm.
how do you go from not wanting anything to all of a sudden you're addicted to painkillers, you're faking it, you're doing this, you're doing that. So I had to basically deal with that for 8 straight years until finally I went to a civilian doctor because I was only doing VA care because that's all I could afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, finally some family members stepped in and had gotten seen by a civilian doctor. And I had 3 major pancreatic surgeries to where they basically chopped my pancreas out in 3 different sections. And 2 of the sections called pusto and another one's called a Whipple, where they basically open up the pancreas and fillet it like a fish. But I had over 100 procedures to try to make the pancreatitis stop. And then
Wow.
once they took my pancreas out in 2 different sections, which is the Whipple, back then it was unheard of somebody my age even getting that. So I flew out to Minneapolis and got basically a total pancreatectomy, which is them taking out my pancreas and taking out my duodenum, trying to revive the cells as much as I had. Because if you get over 500,000 viable, which means living cells, you can possibly become non-diabetic. So they put that into my liver, which is the hepatic portal vein, hoping that I wouldn't be diabetic, but I failed. They had said, unfortunately, all they wanted to do was apologize to me and say, whatever they did to your pancreas, they destroyed it because it looks like an 89-year-old chronic alcoholic at age 25. So
Ugh.
whatever they did to you, we're really, really sorry, but we can't even manage this right now. So we're just going to take 6 hours to take out the scar tissue that I had on my stomach. And then I was under for over 8 hours, which you're really not supposed to be under for that long. But there was nothing they could do. They had to take away all the debris and fix all the issues. So my intestines have been rewired 3 times at this point in time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so in all, I've been in 3 comas, have had 4 organs taken out, and have had 3 transplants.
Oh my God.
So,
Now, I will tell you that I mean, not anything nearing that magnitude, but in 2016, I had my kidney, famous one I just talked about, removed. And I was pretty scared to let the VA do it. But the idea, I knew that that surgery was going to be incredibly expensive.
right.
And I was blessed in the fact and very lucky in the fact that OSHU, that I actually was living here in the Pacific Northwest, number 1 by
Yeah.
Portland, when I realized that I was going to have to lose this kidney. And OSHU is right next door to the VA hospital. And actually, shout out to the VA hospital in Portland because it's actually pretty good. I have had very minimum issues here, and I've been to several around the country. And this one is one of the better ones. I've had some issues, but this one is one of the better ones, right? So they outsourced my procedure to an expert. And I was super lucky to have the experience that I have. And I recovered amazingly and feel so much better. That kidney was like dragging me down almost my entire life. I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
So I feel you on how much that it's a mental and emotional toll going through this prolonged health issue. And then ultimately having part of your body taken out. It's pretty psychological. And you've had that multiple times. So
Unfortunately, yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that my book, A Resilient Warrior, just plays into that. You know, I basically
Hmm.
teach people that there is some light at the end of the tunnel if you have 1 ounce of hope, if you continue on with your fight, and if you just believe that there can be hope. Because a lot of people feel like, oh, there's nothing to live for. And, you know, I dedicate my time and created a company called Feed My City, which is learning how to grow from the inside out and helping people learn by growing plants for yourself and others. We can sustain our communities to help other people too. So it's one seed, one plant, and one garden at a time. And at one point, about 3.5 years ago, I thought I was dying. So I put trees in my backyard and to leave a legacy behind. So I was like, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well do something that'll help the community. So I put a bunch of trees in my backyard, not knowing that it would take 4 or 5 years to grow fruit, but eventually, you know, basically would be able to bring that to food banks and child advocacy groups, and basically have created this legacy that people have internationally have asked me to jump on board. And I don't get paid for it. That's what people don't understand. I basically spent over $37,000 my own company to basically help this thrive. And I asked for donations, but haven't really gotten as much as, you know, to pay that back. But at the time, I believed that if I could make a difference in my community, what more could I do? So then I outreach to different places in the United States. And I'm more known in Europe actually than I am in the United States, because they brought on this program, and a guy in Scotland who's going to also grow, and people in Ireland and Iceland and England and the UK have basically asked, you know, hey, can we jump on board? I'm like, sure, you know, why not?
It's
So
amazing.
lately I've been receiving accolades about that, but I really want to teach people to grow literally from the inside out so that they can flourish, because everything that we do is a mindset. So if you complete and clear your mindset, and I'm not saying I'm positive all the time because I'm not, but I
Who
work
is?
really, really hard on maintaining that strength and maintaining a different set of values to where I'm like, all right, this was a bad day. Let's not, you know, go into the next day, the new morning. So let's try to at least see the sun is up. It's a new day. What can I do? Not only for myself, but for others as well.
I love that you said that too, because I'm a firm believer in mindset, and that, you know, it's really cliche, but I love this saying. It goes, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right.
Yep.
Right.
Right about
And
it.
so I really think your mindset is the beginning of everything. Mindset and self love, I think, are the two power players to achieve
Right.
anything. And, you know, I coach on the side of this, and I have coached over 1,000 people with London Real Academy, and CEOs, everything down to, you know, people that just want to create something, people who want to start a business, up to CEOs and multimillionaires. And I work with them all. And what I can tell you, I know for a fact, is everything is mindset. You
Right.
know, everything starts with mindset. Of course, we're going to have those bad moments, those bad days, right? But if you give yourself what works for me, and I stole this from Beyonce, by the way, if you give yourself a time limit, right? Like you said, tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to get up and decide, I'm going to
Right.
choose to have a better day. Well, you have to feel your dark emotions and your negative emotions. No one's saying don't feel them. You have to. Otherwise, they bottle up and it's more toxic that way.
Right.
Right. So if I need to cry, scream, kick, I'm depressed, I want to be under the covers, like whatever it is, I do that. And I have a time limit. It used to be 48 hours. Now it's 24 hours. So I'm like you, I get up the next day and I'm like, it's a new day. I need to shake this off and just, you know, I'm going to tell myself positive things all day
Right.
to
And let
help
me give
myself
you a
get
quote
through.
that basically says that your mindset can create disease. You know, there's
Mm-hmm.
different things that we say to ourselves, and she changes those into positive affirmations so that people can realize like your
Mm-hmm.
mindset can create disease and can create cancer. People don't realize like
Mm-hmm.
depression and anxiety and stress. Stress can cause disease, you know, and our bodies aren't meant to be stressed out in a constant state of mind. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not meant to be people that have, you know, struggle with severe anxiety and PTSD. There's a lot of illnesses that come about because their mindset, you know, and I feel like also being able to calm that down with neurofeedback and EMDR, it's a certain thing that kind of resets the brain because trauma is known to change the brain. So with
Mm-hmm.
neurofeedback, what it does is it changes the neural pathways so that you're not struggling with the same issues. And I've been doing it now for a year, and it's finally calming me down to the point where I can have certain people come from behind, but not as, I was always looking behind me. And up
Mm-hmm.
until 2 years ago, I was sleeping with a baton, a double-edged knife, and mace, but I also wasn't walking very well. So, I mean, that sort of has been relieved by my transplant, because I have something called CRPS, which is chronic regional pain syndrome. And I've had 2 stem cell transplants, which have really helped. They've taken 50% of the burning down. And it's also taken it to where I used to have to elevate my leg constantly, and I wasn't able to put it down below my eyeballs, or otherwise it would like literally expand to 10 times its size, turn purple, turn red, and just start burning. So I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. But with these transplants, it's finally gotten to the point where I can walk, I can hike. I go snowshoeing with this company called Oregon Adaptive Sports, which is an amazing company that has volunteers that help people adapt with disabilities. Basically, if you have no legs, one leg, no arms, one arm. And also the scars that I tell people, there are scars on my body all over, but the most ones that you can't see are not seen. And so sometimes I think that the stigma that's attached to veterans or attached to mental illness can be harmful to people, because they don't realize that there are days that are going to be really bad, but then there are going to be days where that it can be really, really good. And if we choose to keep that mindset going, we can get out of it some way. And not everybody has a partner. I'm single. I've been single for a long time, and I want to remain single until I find the right person. I'm not here
Feel
to,
you.
people are like, well, go online. And no, I don't really
Mm-mm.
feel like dating right now. I feel like if I am meant to meet somebody, it'll be along my path. It's not going to be some dating site or somebody saying, go hook up with so and so. No thanks. So I figure if I get my mind right and I get my body right, then eventually the pieces will come together, and it's like a puzzle. And maybe these pieces are missing right now, but maybe they'll fit together, and I'll become whole again, as far as being whole as much as I can be with all the parts that I've got missing. But, when I was training for the 100-mile ride and the 65-mile ride, my friend, before he died, we would joke around and he would call me half pint because I had half the organs. But at one point I was training for 65 miles and a 100-mile ride. Everything changed, unfortunately, when I arrived in San Antonio, Texas, and thought I was going to get married to somebody, and he turned into Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh
And
no.
I went into the VA for a bilateral ankle fracture, because I'd come down the ladder one day. I was pruning trees, and I thought, I'll just get one more tree done. And it's the last one, last one of the day. And I was pushing myself too hard. And literally, I missed the very last step. And I went clink, and everything basically crushed underneath so there's 2 ankles. People don't realize there's 2 ankles in one foot. So I had a bilateral ankle fracture, and those shattered, and basically I had a tib fib fracture at the same time. And so unfortunately at the VA, when I say I was tortured for 4 straight months, they didn't give me anesthesia to block my leg.
Oh my
Basically,
God.
they didn't. So with anesthesia, it numbs the area. And they were telling me that I was lying, that I couldn't feel anything. And then later on, when I had a anesthesiologist read the report, she's like, there's no way that you could have been blocked, because there's no temperature changes. We do temperature changes on the foot to make sure that this is blocked, so that before we do surgery, we make sure you're numbed. And then a screw came out and popped up, and like metal fragments basically were all through my leg. And so they kept saying that I
Oh,
was lying. They were telling my family that I was going psychotic and trying
oh,
to shut me up. And so on the second scene, that when it came out, because they made the cast 4 times its size, and I have pictures of all this. I put it all out at this point in time to show what type of treatment I got, when I got it, what dates that were handled. Unfortunately, the second surgery was the worst, because they blocked my bladder instead of my foot. And
oh,
the doctor basically tied my saphenous vein, which means that if I ever have a heart attack, I won't be able to use that vein that helps the heart. So I'm an interventional radiology nurse and a trauma nurse. So with that vein, that's how you help the heart. So if I ever have a heart attack, basically, either they'd have to try to use my leg vein or I'd be done. And so with
oh
them
my
doing that,
God.
I was either raped by 1 or 4 doctors. The records say that I was specifically the only one in there. Well, in surgery, you can't be the only one, especially in this surgery. You have to have techs in there. You have to have nurses in there. You have to have scrub techs in there. You have to have people that are counting different equipment at that time. And then a couple paragraphs down, before the nurse named Grace changed my records, Dr. John L. Hinchy said that he was the only one in the room. And then later on, it says that there was 3 other doctors in there, and I named them all in my book as well.
Wow.
The first e-reader, which was Mindy's fight, and then I had to redo a new structure. But I had vaginal scrapings for 3 days. So why would you even have anything going on with that area if you're having an ankle surgery? And so they had basically made it so that my blood sugars would go flying up to 1100, 1200, and then they would wait all day and bring me down to like in the 20s and 15 at sometimes. So I ended up having a lot of brain issues because of that, and a lot of issues that had happened. So I ended up losing 37 pounds because they didn't give me food. They wouldn't give me help. For the first 2.5 weeks, they wouldn't allow any CNAs or any medical help to me. They just kind of threw me at home and told me to figure it out. They wouldn't give me pain medications because they said that I was faking it and that I was lying to get attention, basically. And so I come out with all of it. 3.5 years ago, I was like filling out my 5 wishes. And that was kind of like my tell-all was Mindy's fight. And I named names and dates and times and everything else. But then I came back out about 7 months ago in July. I wrote A Resilient Warrior, and basically telling from childhood till now what I've been doing with my life, what's happened, and basically have tried to find kind of a sense of peace through it all. And that's when I said, when I finally wrote my book, it gave me an internal justice once people were actually reading my story and coming back to me and saying, this is horrible and we need your story. We need you to come out. They had, at one point, I was heard screaming 3 double doors down in the OR. And you got to be pretty loud screaming in an OR because the next room doesn't really hear you because the music's loud, people are doing their own thing. But this was 3 double doors down. And at one point, I had scared this guy because I literally grabbed by the neck of his scruff. We have brown shirts underneath of our military uniforms. And I grabbed it at one point. And all he kept saying was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And at one point I was like, if you say, and this wasn't as nice as I'm going to say it now, but I was like, if you tell me I'm sorry one more time, I'm going to rip your throat out. And then I saw tears in his eyes and I was like, uh-oh, I don't want to get any more trouble. So I let him go. And he's like, I'm not supposed to be here. All right. I'm just telling you, I'm sorry. All right. Get in really big trouble for telling you. And I was like, well, what happened? He goes, you'll have to figure it out. And then left. And so basically I had no idea like the whole scope of things until I could have a friend of mine who rescued me because I had a CNA that was literally, she had warned me. She said, they're coming for you. And another CNA had to pull over on the side. I was like, hey, aren't you going to come help me? You're supposed to be here. She said, they told me to pull over and that they were coming for you. And I was like, coming for me. So I called up a friend of mine who was the other CNA and she got, I think 10 or 12 of her family members to come pack up as much as I could. I called my friend and said, I'll give you $7,000 if you come pick me up right now. So her and her fiance were truck drivers. So they drove 16 straight hours to come get me. And when they got me, I had bruises all over and handprints where there shouldn't be. And I had them taking pictures because they're like, this is just not okay, Mindy. They're not supposed to be a handprint in that area. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, you're just in denial right now. What happened to you? We knew you before this. What is going on? You lived in Denver with us, So they're like, you need to wake up. And I'm like, I am awake. What are you talking about? They're like, we're getting you out of here. And so once we got packed up, they said, let's go to dinner. And when we got back, there was a little business card that said, we were here. We will be coming back for you at this time. So they were like, all right, we're out of here. They picked up my bed, rest of my stuff, put it in the U-Haul, and we were done from that point in time. And we drove to Colorado, and I tried to get as much help as I can. The problem is, what people don't understand is when you're a veteran and you get help from another VA, civilians don't want to take you over because they have to end up taking up the care, the costly effects of the care, and then they have to fix you. So basically I had to go doctor shopping, and they were like, just get up and walk. And I'm like, I can't get up and walk. Can't you see what's going on here? I have metal in my leg. And so the metal screws would open and it closed my skin. So nothing was
Oh
closed.
God.
And so it was a nightmare trying to get anybody to help me. And so I went and called another friend in Oregon. And I was like, look, you're my last shot. I will pay you how much ever it needs to be if you fly out here and drive my car and we, get everything that's already in the U-Haul. I'll pay some movers, put it in storage, and that's what I had to do. So she came and got me, and that's how I basically got to Oregon. And when I got here for my birthday, I was like, I want you to take this metal out. And the doctor said, that's fine, but after this, I can't see you anymore. And so he would basically take the metal out, and then I had to go see another doctor because, again, they don't like to take over the care because then they have to assume responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I've had to retrain my own self. And finally I got physical therapy, but it was after 2.5 years. So,
oh my God.
Right. So all of that, and my back was messed up. My neck was messed up. My throat, I couldn't speak very well. I was stuttering all the time. Things that had happened to my brain. Nothing was fluid. Nothing was going right. And the pain was just constant. It was like ridiculous. And so finally I went into water training and I became a Watsu practitioner, which is helping other people with orthopedic issues and stress, anxiety, going in through the warm water to help people get through their issues. And I became a practitioner. And I've honestly been working on myself for the last now 7 years, because this happened in 2014. And so there have been times throughout this time where I was like, I don't know if I even really want to live through all this pain. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And when I finally had my last transplant, I saw some hope, my second transplant, I saw some hope. And I ended up doing this movie called Bridge of the Doomed, where I was still falling on my face. A friend of mine who's another combat veteran had to help me through the scenes. And there were times where my blood sugars would drop into the 20s and 30s and my brain was just not working as well. So then finally I got this last transplant, and it's finally helped, like I said, 50% of the burning, which I'll take 50% less pain any day. I'm hoping to get another transplant so that it takes it down to 75%. My blood sugars were getting a little better. But I do believe that I am a fighter and I persevered through many things. And I still, unfortunately, those doctors are still working at the VA, and they got away with it because of what's called time stature. So they wouldn't allow my medical records to get opened or sent out until the time of stature would basically make it to where they would be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a lot.
No, I'm okay. I'm disgusted on a whole nother level.
I understand.
Okay, I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
I didn't think this was going to be a long episode, but I will tell you what, I have a lot of questions.
I'll try to pinpoint it to where, it's like, and now I can talk about it without becoming a babbling mess. So,
I mean, you're very composed. Everyone can't see you, but I can. And I am very impressed by how composed you are in the telling of your story, because I never fully know what I'm going to get when I hit record with a guest.
Sure.
And this is pretty mind-blowing. And I've heard a lot of mind-blowing shit on this show. I'm not even kidding. But I mean, this is right up there. Okay, so let me go back.
Go to Resilient Warriors so that people could actually like, here, you want to know the details? Because people kept asking for details and they wanted proof. And I was like, this is too much, you guys. I can't. Like, it's too much. Like, trust me, when I tell you my story is too much for you, you won't be able to handle it. They're like, no, we can handle it. And then I start and they're like, okay, no, we're done. We're done. Your shit's going to give us nightmares. So then I wrote a book, and I had to extract 3,500 words because I had 2 armed Marines going to my friend's door asking who I was, where I was, what I was doing, what I was about to write, because they put my book out. So I had to fight on a whole different level just to get my book out and then extract 3,500 words or more so that people wouldn't get their kids taken away. They wouldn't get thrown in jail. They were getting basically told that, what's she doing now? And I had, undercover cars following me. I don't, as much. I haven't seen any undercover cops or anybody following me for like 7 months now that my story is out. But it was a rough road getting to here, and
Oh,
like I said,
girl.
the strength and the resiliency I feel like I show personally, I don't put myself on any other level on anybody. I feel like I'm on the same platform, even though many people say I'm not. I just do because I don't want to ever have my ego take over. Because if I feel like I'm, above somebody or below somebody, if I ever feel like I put myself on a pedestal, I feel like that can get kicked off real fast. So I've
Mm-hmm.
learned to be very humble through this process, especially at this point in time. Like, I don't think that there's really anything else that can happen to me that would shake me as much as what's happened in 2014. That turned my world around and made it so that I didn't even want to be a nurse anymore. Because if the medical professionals can get away with this, what's going to make me trust another medical professional to never do this to me? So, I mean, I do have severe anxiety when I go into hospitals and stuff like that. Certain scents, there's certain smells, like the bathrooms have these certain smells or cleaners
Mm-hmm.
or something that they use,
Mm-hmm.
and it clicks off really fast. And that's what I want to remind people, is that PTSD is not always just something that's like, oh, mind boggling and you're waking up from nightmares. This is something that's like I've been working through for many, many, many years. I don't like it when people are behind me or they think that it's funny to like, scare people, at minimum times, or, coming behind them really fast. What's up? And stuff like that. That doesn't
I
really work.
hate that. I'm hyper vigilant too. I really don't like that.
So I'm looking around, but it's finally gotten to a point for me now where I can talk about this, like I said, without going into tears and without breaking down as a
Mm,
person. It's a lot. It's a
it
lot that's
is,
happened
honey.
in a short amount of time. And I was at the height of my career. I had just signed an $80,000 contract for Express Scripts. That was going to be the bottom line of $80,000. So I was going to be making over $150,000. That was going to be the head lead, being able to travel to do infusions and stuff like that, because I was really good at putting in IVs. I at one point trained over 250 people a week to put in IVs because
Wow.
just to get training for them. And so to go from all of that to literally thinking I'm like on my high horse, and that's why I say I never want to get to that point to where I think that I'm like all that, because that's what happened when I got to that level. It was like you went from this to basically being homeless for a while, trying to find a doctor that will help me, to living in my car for a while, to living in hotels for months at a time, to just getting people who literally thought I was nuts because I was telling them like my story, and I was helpless basically. And so coming from all of that to where I'm at now, I'm definitely proud of myself, and I definitely will take time for other people's stories and to help them as well.
Well, I got to tell you, earlier we were talking about mindset,
Right.
right? And I just can't think of a better person to share that with this female veterans community, right? Because that name, Resilient Warrior, is exactly what you are.
Thank you.
I mean, this story is unbelievable, but at the same time, to me, because of what I saw and experienced in the military, I know it's true.
Right.
So,
And that's the thing. I just felt like I didn't have anything else to prove. It's not, for me, it wasn't about the proof anymore. I had already
mhm,
showed
I
pictures.
can just imagine. So, you said this happened in Texas.
Yeah, San Antonio, Texas. Mentor.
Mm-hmm. When I was in Phoenix, I lived in Phoenix for a year after I got out of the military. Then I went back to Chicago.
I think they call it the Frank Tejeda building too. There's like Frank Tejeda, Mentor, but it's a San Antonio, Texas VA hospital,
Mm-hmm.
an orthopedic center, orthopedic clinic, and their staff. So
Wow, that's
clear, just wanted to make it very, very abundantly clear what happened, who happened it with. And
yeah. And I'm glad you did because, I'm sure I got listeners that live in that area, right? So that they can be
yeah, don't ever
aware.
go to Dr. John L. Hinchy. You have
Wow.
orthopedic issues, because they'll just destroy your, and I had been warned, he's the worst to go to. And they had told my friend, if you let her go see her, they're going to try to kill her.
Oh
I
my God.
know the implications of that. I just thought, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
they're talking shit, but they're literally saying the truth.
They were literally trying to kill me. First time, they tried to kill me by trying to give me 3 nitroglycerin tabs all at once at
Oh my God.
the hospital in 1990. I know, right? In 1996 at Walter Reed. And that's when the big scandals came out. And then that's when they were like, okay, so if you sign this little paper that says that nothing happened, we'll send you wherever you want to go stateside. And I was like, all right, cool. So you'll leave me alone, right? Because I had a friend who had cancer who wrote the White House, which ended up basically they tagged me as a whistleblower. I was being tortured and she couldn't handle it anymore. So she wrote the White House and I got in trouble for it. So I was tagged from that point forward and never got let go of. So if I ever go into any VA, there's things that pop up that I had no idea like what was popping up until a friend of mine explained to me after I was trying to investigate like what the happened. Like I got to figure out all this stuff. And then hiring an outside lawyer, paying over $7,000 to get things set. That basically the head doctor of the Olympics for trauma with my foot bowed out at the last minute because he said, Mindy's considered an expert at this point in time. She has the medical knowledge and medical training. He said, even if I went in there, they would consider her word. You know, I can't be held liable and I got to keep my career. I got to keep this, the other. So he bailed after taking the money. And it sucked. You know, it was kind of more or less like a gut punch again. And so I had to go from all of that to like literally relearning how to even be a person anymore or even be seen as a person. And I couldn't trust anybody at this point. So I went into isolation for 3 years in Oregon, didn't want anything to do with anybody, and finally came out full force when I thought I was dying. I was like, I got nothing to lose. You know, might as well. So I started making videos on Facebook and people were like, oh my gosh, you're alive. Like we thought you were dead. And I was like, I wanted to make it seem like I was dead because I just didn't want anybody getting hurt anymore. Anybody who helped me was getting hurt and, you know, basically told that they would reap the repercussions for helping me. And so I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, this isn't worth it to me. At this point in time now, I'm like, not on a vengeance, but I just want people to hear my story. And mostly I want my book to be on a larger platform. And I'm beyond grateful. It's been bought in over 8 countries at this point in time. I eventually would love to make my book into a movie so that people could see it. Because it's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to see it and experience it and feel it. And, you know, I understand that people see me as a very strong person, but I do have my weak points as well. And I'm human. So, I mean, I do battle that anxiety at times as well.
I absolutely understand. So while you were talking, right, I was remembering something that I read. I think I posted about it on my Twitter at FemVet Podcast. So I will post these articles and upcoming shows on my Twitter account. And I remember posting this article and I was thinking of it. So I pulled it up and it's the title. I'm reading off of CNN Politics right now. The date of the story is Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. And it was written by Zachary Cohen. And it's titled, Former VA Hospital Worker Pleads Guilty to Murders of 7 Veterans.
There you go.
So I just wanted to back you up in saying that if there was a doubt that this happens or it doesn't happen, this is happening. And I'm pretty sure I've seen something like this before a few years ago. And then when I was about to say about the Phoenix hospital that I was seen at when I was there, all of them losing files and not scheduling appointments and resulting in the murders of veterans, because that's what it was. It's the murders of veterans when you don't give them the proper care. So, I mean, I'm just saying that this happens. Your story is, like I said, it is so frighteningly unbelievable. But what makes it worse is that it's all true.
It does. Trust me. When I first was coming out, I was like, this is like a Dateline or a 2020. Like I never in a million years would ever have thought, well, this can't happen to me. This is like some horror show that people put together. And then when the stories were coming out in 2014 about the Phoenix stuff, I was like, I told you guys. And then I was just trying to get help. You know, I was like, look, don't you see? I'm telling you the truth. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to prove. I don't care. It's not just about me. You know, it's about getting help for other people as well. people wanted to shove it underneath the carpet and act like I wasn't telling the truth. Until finally, when I came out with my book, then more veterans were like, Mindy, we believe you. Okay.
Of
We
course.
understand that you're telling the truth at this point in time. And we don't think you're crazy, because they
Mhm.
basically wanted to throw me in Kerrville, a mental facility, to make me shut up.
That's like the age old remedy, right? Oh,
Right.
this person's crazy. Let's commit them. Let's
Right.
put them away. I mean, they used to do that to women in the 1800s. Their husbands would just do it if they didn't want the wife anymore, right? Like it's such a thing. And what they were doing to these women in there, I think was Nellie Bly that did an expose on that back in the late 1800s. I mean, this is the age old thing. Like, oh, we don't want anyone to know about this story.
Right.
Let's say she's crazy.
Right. And that's the easiest thing for them to do. And with their, supposed expertise, they can convince people, I'm a patient. Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one veteran trying to seek help. And at one point when I was all alone, that's when they really were working that system. And that's why my
Wow.
friend warned me. They're like, they're coming for you. And I was like, at the time, joking around, still being my own joking nature, like, oh yeah, get out of here. She says, no, this is not a joke, Mindy. Okay.
Like code red.
Not only that, I was very grateful that she gave me a heads up. Two people giving me heads up was even worse. It was like one person saying something's like, yeah, get out of here. Second person convincing me like, you need to get out of here like today. I'm like, how am I going to get out of here today?
Oh my God.
And then with the business card that was left on my door, when we got back from dinner, they were like, we're getting out of here right now. We don't have time to waste anymore.
Crazy. Like it sounds like something you'd see in a movie.
Sure. Because I was like, I don't want nobody thinking I'm nuts anymore. So I was taking pictures. I was like, look, I'm going to need proof of this. Everybody wants their proof. I just got tired of trying to prove myself. I got tired of trying to extradite different paperwork. Not only that, but in Oregon, I had to prove who I was, where I was, and when I was. I've won 3 congressionals now. But at the time, I had to even prove that I was in Bosnia. Thankfully, I had a little piece of paper in my records that said, I was flown to Bosnia. Because they made it so that my records were clear. I had nothing in my records. Basically, they took me out of the unit that I was in and basically made it so that I was not found. It was nuts.
Oh, wow.
That's why I put in my book pictures like, here I am in uniform. Here, I'm underneath this little big old flag. I say little, but it was a big old flag that says, welcome to Tuzla West. Welcome to Tazar, Hungary. I had a convoy where my PFC Dougherty was on the front of the convoy in my medical unit, and they're like, we don't know where you were. There were no bombings. What are you talking about? I took pictures of bombed buildings because they were like, you're lying. I'm like, here you go. Here, Congress. There were bombings. I did hear bombs going off. I don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
It's been a little nutty for the last 6 years, but like I said, I've gotten to the point now where I feel so strong about my convictions that I will go toe to toe with just about anybody right now. Big, small, doesn't matter.
Wow. I mean, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. This is insane stuff. Like it's very, very, very high level here. Very, very high level. And it's heartbreaking at the most human level. It's heartbreaking that a sister would have to go through all of this and experience all of this. Like what I heard was your life was literally in jeopardy to the point where you had to pack up in a day and evacuate.
I had less than 12 hours.
Like that is something you see in a movie that you're running from the VA. They're coming for you. Like,
yeah, they were.
What?
And they were looking, when I had gotten to Oregon, they were supposed to help me with, my teeth and all this other stuff. And they said, the only way we'll help you is if you come to the VA. I was like, nope. And so they took my bridge and threw it out. They basically took other things that they were supposed to help me with, and they wouldn't send it to my local dentist. They just threw everything out and they said, we're not helping you. So I had to get the money to basically get help with my own stuff. And I have been in the tanks because of it. So I don't ask for pity. Don't get me wrong. It's just I'm really working hard to reset myself, basically, to live again. It's been rough, though.
The trauma of all of that, and coupled with the physical pain, because I live with physical pain on a regular basis myself for my other disabilities. And some days are really, really hard, right? When you're really, really suffering. And I always say that chronic pain, unless you experience it, people don't understand how easy it is to not want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
Right? To just say, I'm just done. I can't live another day like this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So I've definitely been there, and had those really, really low moments. But you're dealing with chronic pain, you're going through all these health issues, and on top of this, you're having mental and like psychological and an emotional trauma perpetrated on you. We talked about all this, but we didn't even go into the assault that happened. Not really. Like, we talked about everything around that, but at the same time, you have a handprint here. You mentioned that you shouldn't have one. This doctor, something happened there.
And that's why I write in my book, I'll never say that I was raped. But why do I have vaginal scrapings for 3 straight days for an ankle surgery? And people have to realize a Foley goes through your urethra, not your vagina.
I mean, that's
my neck, my back. There were so many things, the injuries that just were proven on x-rays as well. And I put those up on Facebook as well so that people could see, like, I'm not lying here.
That is depraved. I mean, absolutely sickening to think that you're unconscious for surgery and someone takes advantage. I mean, there are sick people out there. I know that. I know. But you think as a veteran, you're going to go in and you're going to get care. And then you come out with these questions as to why do I have bruising here? Like, any woman, that has to just sit on your soul, like on your spirit. Like, I don't know exactly what happened to me, but I know something.
Well, the trust factor was undeniable. It was more or less I couldn't trust anybody at this point.
My God. I just absolutely, completely empathize. And when you were talking about the smells of like the hospital and the certain cleaner, I could smell it. I know that smell.
Right.
And I could see exactly how that would trigger you and how so many things would trigger you. But the thing is I say that not to dwell on that. I say that to point out how amazing your journey has been.
Oh, thank you.
To be so well and to be so composed at this moment and to be so powerful, like, as to say, I'm going to do this. I'm telling, because you know how there are a lot of people who don't feel empowered to speak their truth. Right. And to say, I have this evidence, or maybe they don't have the evidence. So they're afraid to say anything because no one will believe them, or look at everything this person went through. So I'm not going to put myself through that aggravation. Right.
That I was crazy for coming out because I didn't have enough proof. And I was like, I don't care. I'm coming out. I'm going to tell people what happened. They could believe it or not. It's not my problem.
And you're right. They can believe it or not, and that's not your problem.
And I wish more veterans would understand that, it's not about my ego or me proving anything to you. People are going to gossip about me. People are going to hate me. People are going to love me. That's not my problem. My MO is basically helping other people and helping myself get through this journey to where when I take my last breath, people will know at least I've done the best that I can.
I feel that. And I just want to say that I'm so in awe of everything that you're doing. And I feel so honored that you came to the Female Veterans Podcast to share your story, because this is a safe space and this is a platform for us to speak our truth. Yeah. Whatever that truth is for you, that's your truth. And I created this platform for you to be able to do that. So.
And I hope more veterans do come out. I hope more veterans speak their truth loud and clear, and that they're not ashamed to come out and say that this is what happened to me. Trust me, it's not going to probably be on the scale that I got, but I understand that it could be, but people are afraid. People still live in an immense amount of fear. And if I didn't have anything to lose, if I had children, or if I had, something else to lose, I probably maybe would have a different outlook on things, but I have nothing to lose here. So I'm probably the most dangerous at this point in time because I got nothing to lose. And that's the scariest thing for people, is when you have nothing to lose and you come out with it all and you're like, all right, you wanted to see it? There you go.
Wow. This is just an incredible, incredible story. And I can't say enough that your mindset at this point, and the way you choose to view life is so impressive.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you shared that. And in fact, I know I've taken up a lot of your time. So I don't want to keep you forever, but I really would like to find out how you are now.
I'm doing the best I can. Through my book, I advocate mostly, which it's called A Resilient Warrior. You can find out more about me at www.feedmycity.net or my book, A Resilient Warrior, on Amazon. That's my outlet. Those are my babies. And that's how I have persevered and show people strength. And I also, well, eventually, once COVID goes away or something else comes up, I would love to go back to public speaking, because I was going into high schools and teaching children that just because you're getting bullied right now doesn't mean that that's who you are. And so I would have these kids looking at themselves, I put a mirror up in front of them and say, I love you for who you are. I love you for who you're going to be. And I love you for who you're not right now. But knowing that tomorrow will be a better day, even if you're being bullied, because there's kids committing suicide right now, veterans committing suicide. So I don't tell them the brashness of what happened, but I let them know sort of similarities so that they can draw their own conclusions based on their age, sex. I don't want to give them nightmares either.
Right.
But I've had many kids' parents actually reach out to me and say, my kid was suicidal. Now he's on sports teams. Now he's going for motocross. Now he's succeeding. And, whatever you said to him got through. I couldn't get through to him, but you got through to him. And that means a lot to me. And for me, that's what keeps me going, is telling my story and watching other people thrive and grow and become successful through not just me. I mean, I would never take that on, but maybe helping them see something different. And if I can provide 1 ounce of hope, I feel like 1 ounce of hope can bring you to move mountains. Because if you have 1 ounce of hope, then that might maybe change your mindset into, I want to kill myself, into maybe one more moment I'll hold on. If she did it, maybe I can do it. If she got through all that and she's walking and talking now and, walking in the canyon and helping other people, maybe there's something to live for.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And that's so, so true. You and I are very in alignment in the way that we like to help others. And I think that comes from actually going into the military and being a person who serves, who cares about other people. And I feel like that this podcast, my mission here is very similar to what you're doing. I say I like to plant a seed, right? And maybe somebody else will come along and water that seed, and that positivity or that moment or that hope or that healing will help somebody. So when I started this show, I said, you know what? I don't know who's going to listen to me. I don't know if anybody is going to listen to it. I said, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep doing it. And I said, because if I can just help one person, whether it's the person who feels less alone because this is their story, but they haven't been able to find their voice yet, or it's the person who went through that trauma, but they didn't know anyone else did, or the person who needed to heal by sharing their story, because that's cathartic too. So, and for the people who had a wonderful experience and want to scream from the rooftops how much of an amazing experience being in the military was for them, no matter what it is, I wanted to give it a space. And so, and I think that does provide hope. And you going and talking to those kids, I cannot wait for you to do that, because especially here where I am, a lot of teenagers are super depressed and they just need that. They need that. And it's a beautiful thing.
Hope again. And that's what I want to provide. I haven't been able to do that lately. And also we were set to be inside actually Bend jail, because I wanted to teach. The next platform was to teach inmates the same exact thing. Your mindset. You can be in a cell, but if I teach you how to grow, once you come out, you'll be a member of society. So growing plants, they can grow something on the outside and learn. By gardening, they can decrease their stress, help their mindset. Unfortunately, COVID kind of took that out and put a plug in it. So I had talked to the powers that be, and then they basically had said that our governor's saying that no outside programs can be made, I guess, at this point, or all the procedures have been changed, because of COVID. So I said, well, maybe next year, because last year we were supposed to start it, and, or the year before last, we were just about to get it started and COVID hit right when
Mm-hmm.
they were supposed to start, which was last year. And then this year I reached out and they said basically the same thing. I said, okay, well, maybe next year, so
Mm-hmm.
keep me in mind because I'm not going away. I'll see you next year. Really tenacious, my goals. And I get my goals are huge, in many people's eyes, but it's like, all right, I'm not going away. So let's all get comfortable with that fact.
I love that. I always say perseverance is a superpower, right? Like if you're just tenacious and relentless in
Yes.
your pursuit of what it is you want, other people think it's big, right?
Right.
And that's because they're looking at it from their perspective.
Right. And that's why I want this book to be made into a movie, because it can show people also, people that don't know how to read, because I have reading issues as well. So, when people are like, oh, I don't read, not a problem. Let's make it into a different outlet that people can see, and doing these podcasts, you don't have to read it. You can hear me, the story. This is what happened. But to make it into a movie where people can actually see it for themselves would be great too.
Mm-hmm. And an audiobook, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to do that next, but I haven't really gotten the resources yet for that one yet.
I have a feeling it'll work out for you.
Thank you.
So I have another question for you before we wrap it up. Tell me now, you have given us so much wonderful advice, sort of spread out through this conversation. But I want to ask you for one more piece of advice for our veteran sisters coming up behind you.
So I would offer getting your mindset clear as day, and it's not always and clear day means meditate, garden, color mandalas, listen to music that will soothe your soul instead of amp you up. Find the people in your life that are non-toxic. And if there's family members in your life that are toxic, get rid of them. And that is a hard concept for people to understand because they always think, oh, that person's in your family. Well, if your family members, which mine are very toxic, they got to go. And I understand that many people think that that's a cold way of saying things or a cold way of an outlook per se. But to me, it's more toxic to allow people in your life that are going to drag you into the dirt and abuse you and do self-sacrifice for themselves, making themselves feel better about themselves by tearing you down. And no longer will I allow anybody in my life to do that. I won't allow friends of mine to do that because they're not friends. I won't allow people to, degrade me or, tell me I'm a liar or none of that is acceptable, at this point in time. So I really feel like self-care is the best way to go. Meditate, which doesn't mean you're on some mountain going, humana, humana, humana. It's basically, you can do walking meditations, which I do, I walk in the canyon, or physical exercise is good. And if you cannot, like I was in a wheelchair and I was bedbound for 3.5 years. So I'll help you understand some people cannot walk or do that thing. You can exercise in bed, even if it's lifting your arms, for a little bit, lifting your legs a little bit, wiggling your toes, whatever you can do to kind of get yourself moving and get yourself motivated for the next day is what you need to do. And for me, gardening has helped me, watching the birds, I have a couple bird feeders, watching the birds come in and just the little things in nature that have helped me. And then literally aspiring for whatever dream you have and not letting anybody say, this is a pipe dream. Because I've had many people tell me, your book into a movie, that's just a pipe dream. And you're just trying to live it up. You think you're all that. No, I don't. But I'm going to try to influence as many people as I can before I die. And just know that your voice matters, no matter what you've gone through, even if it's not trauma. People don't have to go through such a traumatic experience just to learn to value themselves, that we all matter at some point, and some people's voices do make a difference. And if there are children out there that are hearing this, or, people's parents that are let them listen to this podcast, understand that your voice matters and that every day that you go on, it's about perseverance and strength. I think that's what
Absolutely.
Feed My City offers people. And I believe I'm getting more teenagers. Actually, the parents are allowing them to read my book, just, which is amazing to me because I didn't know, the age group. And I'm like, I just got to forewarn you, there's cursing in my book. They're like, that's okay. They've heard it before. Just making sure that that, this is very raw, harsh material. And I've had many parents that, that are 16, 17, 15-year-olds are actually reading this book and they're being inspired. So I can no longer say that there's an age gap on what I talk about because kids are going through this. I was gang raped at 10. So, I can only imagine that other people that are going through this, they need to hear it. We need to kind of stop sugarcoating things and avoiding what's really happening. That's what I honestly want to come away with all this is persevere.
Absolutely. Amazing advice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate you. And for being a guest on the Female Veterans Podcast. I know I already said it, but I'm going to say it again. I'll probably say it one more time before I wrap the show. But I am really appreciative of your story and of your time. And just my heart goes out to you for everything that you've been through. If I could hug you right now, I would absolutely just grab you and hug the shit out of you.
I would.
But I really,
but I would with you.
I am so incredibly impressed by your resilience, actually. So where can we find you on social media?
So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And most of those are WTR GPSY, so Water Gypsy without the vowels. Or you can just go to www.feedmycity.net. And that has podcasts as well as my social media and IMDb on television and film that I'm working on now. And www.feedmycity.net also has my book available for signed copies of A Resilient Warrior, or on Amazon.com, you can find A Resilient Warrior. And my face is on the very cover of it as well.
Well, everyone who listens to this show, and if you're new listening, if you look in the show notes or the description box of this episode, I will have all those links there for you so that you can find Mindy and connect with her and follow her journey and maybe even learn more from her. So it has been such an honor and such a blessing to spend this time with you and get to know you and hear your story and connect with your energy. It is a great, great privilege to have you as a guest on the Female Veterans Podcast. Thank you for coming. And you know what? With that, we're going to wrap it up.
Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again. And you know what? I got to just say that I can't wait for the pandemic to be over so that you can go spread your message far and wide. And you can count on my support as much as I can help to do that. So I want to say to everybody out there, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I never know where it's going to take us. And I really appreciate you for listening. As always, you know how to connect with me. It's in the description box below if you want to reach out to the Female Veterans Podcast. And I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. You can follow along there. If you want to leave a review, that would be helpful so we can spread the word far and wide. On Apple Podcasts, I would love to see what you think of the show. I hope you like it. 5-star reviews obviously are what I'm looking for, but say the truth. Anyway, and it just helps the algorithm, you know how that goes. And then iTunes or Apple Podcasts now will spread it farther along and around the world based on the reviews. So also, if you want to support Hope for Veterans, the not-for-profit that I work with as well, then you know how to do that. The information is in the description box or the show notes of this episode. And I appreciate everybody who's been donating. I would love it if you could donate to Feed My City. That would be amazing. It is such a beautiful cause. And if you feel compelled to, if the message resonated with you today, please, please go support Mindy. Please go support Mindy. She's incredible. And what she's doing is just, well, you heard, it's amazing. So with that, I'm going to say, I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.